Hello, I'm Jason Campagna. If you remember, the last time we were together, we talked about demos for the new Scotch Weld and Scotch Seal line of urethane products. Today, let's talk about some end-use applications for the concrete repair product line. Do you think this has ever happened to your customer? Well, that accident could have potentially cost your customer a lot of money. So why did that happen? If we look down, we see a spall in the concrete, a fairly large hole or crack at a transition point between one slab of concrete to the next. A very common place to see these happen. There are other cracks that you may run into that the customer might want to repair as well, such as this thin crack over here. That's not a really good opportunity for us at this point because it's so small. If your customer really wants to be proactive, they can use devices such as a crack chaser or a saw blade to go after something like that. As a rule of thumb, about 1/8 of an inch is the smallest crack that you want to start with. But let's focus on the spall that we saw before. This seems like a fairly large hole. The question may come up, is this a point where I'd like to use a manual applicator, such as this, or the pneumatic applicator, much larger, looks like this? That's really going to depend on how many of these cracks you are going to repair. If you're going to use more than 1 or 2 cartridges a day, I would definitely recommend the pneumatic applicator. If you're filling a spall or 2 a week, the manual will be more than sufficient. The other thing is we are indoors here, but these cracks also do happen outdoors. Something to remember there, especially in places like Minnesota where it's cold, you want that temperature to be a minimum of 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Doesn't mean that a repair can't be made at a lower temperature, but you will need to provide some space heating to that area. So let's look at how we're going to prepare this crack to fill it. First thing that we want to do is remove all the large loose impediments. Just with your hand, some of the stubborn ones maybe with a screwdriver, and then prepare it a little further with a wire brush, getting a little more aggressive at the edges. The next level would be to clean out the small particles in one of 3 ways. One way could be something like a shop vac or vacuum. Another common way is a pressure washer or some sort of clean, dry air, such as I'll use here. Remember, you're going to want to use safety glasses, especially for something like this. At this point, this spall looks fairly clean. Let's get the cartridge ready for dispensing. Because I'm just doing one repair here, and it's not extremely large, I'm going to use the manual applicator. Remember to release the back by pulling on the trigger. Insert the cartridge. At this point, we need to cut the front of the cartridge. Take a utility knife. Cut this cartridge at the scored line. For cleanliness, you may want to put some paper towels underneath the front in case there's any drips. Just rock the blade back and forth. The next important step is going to be balance the pistons. We want to make sure that both sides are dispensing equally before we put that mix nozzle on to ensure proper cure. You can always press on the release to stop the flow. At this point, we're ready to put on the mixing nozzle and begin to fill the crack. Simply put on the mixing nozzle by twisting and then begin to fill. Now as we go to fill this, a couple things to remember. You can see I'm starting from the lowest area of the spall first. That allows the adhesive to flow the best. The other thing I'm doing is keeping a steady flow of material. That allows for the material to level to its optimum capacity, and it's a little easier to dispense. A couple more things that you can do to give this repair a more finished look are take masking tape to the edges and then pull that tape up after about 2 minutes to give clean lines. You can use things such as a polypropylene or polyethylene spreader to get a clean surface and fill all the way to the edge. And in some cases, you can even use a larger polypropylene or polyethylene sheet to put on top with some weight to give a completely even and smooth surface. If that's an afterthought, this material can also be sanded easily by using a 50 grit disc or belt. It's been about 15 minutes, and at this point, you can see that the adhesive is fully hardened. Your customer can now drive his cart across that repair without any issues at all. Now remember, this is just 15 minutes. There's nothing else that your customer is going to find that's faster or more permanent.